Have you ever noticed that men often don't miss you when you're pouring your heart out? Always there, always available. But strangely, the moment you step back, when you least expect it, he starts texting, calling, even showing up like he suddenly remembered who you are. That's not a coincidence. That's psychology. See, men don't miss what's consistently in front of them. They miss what disrupts their emotional rhythm, what creates a sudden void, what forces them to feel your absence in a way they can't ignore. The moment you stop trying, stop fixing, stop chasing, something in him wakes up. Not because you became cold or mean, but because you shifted from pursuing energy to magnetic presence. And that shift is powerful. This video isn't about playing game. It's about understanding human behavior, emotional tension, and the way masculine energy actually connects to longing. Because when a woman stands in her worth, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, she becomes unforgettable. Men don't miss the woman who gave everything. They miss the woman who gave just enough and then disappeared when it was no longer reciprocated. In this video, I'm going to show you why men start missing you only when you stop needing them to, and how you can stop chasing love and start attracting it. If you've ever felt unseen, undervalued, or ghosted after giving your all, this is your roadmap back to your power. Because your energy, when you own it fully, is what makes him remember you long after you're gone. Let's break it down, step by step. One of the most misunderstood yet powerful tools in relationships is emotional distance. Not coldness, not punishment, but intentional space. And when used with confidence and clarity, emotional distance becomes the very thing that flips a man's perspective, making him start to miss you deeply. Why? Because the masculine mind is wired for pursuit. Men value what they have to earn, not what is handed to them freely. When you're always emotionally available, when you respond instantly, overinvest, or constantly check in, you unintentionally remove the mystery. You give him access without effort. And when something requires no effort, it's rarely cherished. Emotional distance resets the dynamic. It allows the man to feel the absence of your energy, your presence, your softness, and that's when he starts noticing what he took for granted. But here's what most women get wrong. Emotional distance is not about ghosting or being passive-aggressive. It's not about cutting him off completely or punishing him into attention. True emotional distance is about centering yourself. It's about pulling your energy back and reclaiming it, not because you're playing a game, but because you realize your worth isn't tied to someone else's behavior. When you stop over-functioning in the relationship, something powerful happens. You create emotional space that allows a man to reflect. He starts to wonder, why has she gone quiet? What's shifted? Is she losing interest? These questions don't just create curiosity, they trigger emotional tension, and that's exactly what sparks longing. Distance gives you perspective too. It shows you what he does with space. Does he pursue you, step up, communicate more intentionally, or does he remain passive and let you drift? His response tells you everything about where he truly stands. And instead of trying to read his mind, you get clarity based on his actions. Another benefit, emotional distance allows you to reconnect with yourself, to fill your own cup, to step back into your passions, your friendships, your goals. You stop orbiting around his potential and start embodying your own. That shift is magnetic. When a woman lives fully without needing constant emotional reinforcement from a man, he feels the loss of her energy far more than if she had been clinging to him. It's in her silence that he hears her value. It's in her stillness that he starts remembering. It's in her absence that he finally feels the weight of what she brought into his life. So when you create emotional distance, do it from a place of grounded confidence, not to chase a reaction, but to return to your center, to stop leaking your energy into someone who hasn't shown you consistency, to trust that the man who truly values you will feel that distance and move toward you. Let him feel your absence. Let him miss your softness. Let the silence speak louder than words. Because when you remove your emotional availability, you give him the opportunity to choose you consciously, intentionally, and without pressure. And that's where the real connection begins. The second shift that makes a man start missing you more than ever is moving from need to neutral, an emotional space where you're no longer seeking validation, approval, or attention from him. But you're also not cold, distant, or unavailable. This is what I call emotional neutrality, and it's one of the most magnetic energies a woman can embody. See, when you're in need mode, you may not even realize it. It shows up subtly. You text first all the time. You analyze his words for hidden meaning. You feel anxious when you haven't heard from him. You feel rejected when he doesn't respond the way you hoped. Your entire emotional world starts orbiting around what he is or isn't doing. Men can feel this energy even if you're not saying it out loud. The more you need him to respond a certain way, the less freedom he feels in the connection. And the moment he starts to feel pressure, his instinct is to pull away. Not because he doesn't like you, but because emotional pressure feels like a trap. That's where neutrality changes everything. When you shift to neutral, your energy becomes steady. You're no longer checking your phone constantly or seeking reassurance. You're no longer interpreting his silence as rejection. You begin to let things be what they are, instead of forcing them to become what you want. And here's the paradox. The less you need a specific response, the more a man feels free to respond. The less you chase closeness, the more he leans in. Emotional neutrality allows him to feel your confidence and self-trust, signals that your world doesn't collapse without him. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Neutral doesn't mean you don't care. It means your care doesn't come from insecurity. It comes from calm, from choice, from power. You show up from a place of, I enjoy you, but I don't need you to complete me. And that energy, it lingers. It haunts a man in the best way, because it's rare. Most people operate from extremes. They're either overly available and anxious, or distant and guarded. Neutral is the in-between. It's graceful, unbothered, mysterious, and firm. And most importantly, it's authentic. You're not pretending not to care. You've simply stopped outsourcing your peace. You've stopped letting a man's inconsistency determine your self-worth. And from that neutral space, you begin to observe more and react less. You give him the space to show up or not. And either way, you stay rooted in your own center. So how do you embody this? You notice when you're becoming emotionally reactive and you pause. You breathe before responding. You stop sending messages as a way to ease your anxiety. You let the silence stretch. You trust that what is meant for you will reveal itself without your pushing. You begin to live fully, boldly, beautifully, with or without him. Because when you shift from need to neutral, you stop begging for breadcrumbs and start attracting the banquet you've always deserved. If you want a man to truly miss you, not out of ego, but from emotional recognition, then one of the most powerful things you can do is mirror his energy and pull back with purpose. Now, let's be clear. Mirroring energy is not manipulation. It's not some tit-for-tat strategy where you play games to get attention. It's about emotional self-respect. It's about showing a man that you're not going to invest more than what you're receiving. You're not going to chase him, convince him, or carry the emotional weight of the connection on your own. When a man pulls back, a lot of women panic. They over-explain, reach out more, try harder to prove their value. But all that does is teach him that he can withdraw and still have access to your energy. And that pattern never ends well. You're left depleted, confused, and wondering why your effort doesn't lead to commitment. This is where mirroring becomes your superpower. If he slows down communication, you do the same. If he gets inconsistent, you stop being overly available. Not because you're angry, but because you're aware. You match his investment and you let the imbalance correct itself or fade out. Either way, you protect your value. But the second part of this is just as critical. You must pull back with purpose. That means you're not withdrawing to get a reaction. You're withdrawing to reconnect with yourself. You pull back because you realize that your peace is more important than proving your worth to someone who isn't showing up fully. This is where true confidence is born, not in chasing attention, but in trusting that you don't need to beg to be chosen. When you pull back intentionally, you give him the space to feel your absence. And if he's emotionally connected to you, that absence will hit him harder than any text or conversation ever could. It creates a vacuum. It stirs something in him. It forces him to ask, wait, where did she go? Why does it feel different without her around? Men need space to feel, and most importantly, they need to feel the loss of your presence to understand the value you brought. But here's what separates high-value women from the rest. When they pull back, they don't wait anxiously for a response. They redirect their energy. They invest in themselves. They glow up mentally and emotionally. They become so focused on their own path that their absence becomes louder than their presence ever was. And that's when the magic happens. He checks your profile and sees you're living. He rereads old messages and realizes how good you were to him. He sits in the silence and feels the shift. And in that silence, if he's the right man, he'll move towards you. Not out of panic, but because he remembers the emotional space you used to hold, and he realizes what it felt like to lose it. So the next time he pulls back, don't panic, don't chase, don't overgive to overcompensate, just mirror. Let your energy speak for itself. Let your absence ask the questions your words never could. Let your stillness become the mirror he sees himself in. Because when you match energy instead of forcing connection, you don't just protect your heart, you elevate your worth. And that's exactly what makes you unforgettable. Confidence is attractive, but unavailable confidence, that's irresistible. This doesn't mean you're cold, emotionally distant, or pretending you don't care. It means you carry yourself in a way that says, I am deeply rooted in who I am, and access to me is earned, not assumed. Unavailable confidence is the energy of a woman who is selective with her time, intentional with her presence, and unbothered by the temporary disappearance of someone who couldn't match her consistency. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You're not unavailable because you're wounded, you're unavailable because you're whole. Most women don't realize this. Men are biologically wired to chase what they believe is valuable and scarce. That's not shallow, it's instinct. So when you show up as someone who gives too much too quickly, always initiates, always explains, always adjusts, he subconsciously stops valuing that access. Not because he's cruel, but because it came without cost. And that's why unavailable confidence creates gravity. It's the kind of energy that says, I want a connection, but I don't need one to feel whole. It's the energy of a woman who has options, not just romantically, but in life. She's not sitting by the phone. She's booked, busy, glowing, growing. And that makes a man wonder where he stands. When you're in this energy, you stop fighting for breadcrumbs. You stop negotiating your needs. You stop shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. You no longer seek permission to be seen or chosen. You know you are the prize. You also don't explain your worth. You simply express it in how you walk, in how you speak, in how little you react when someone doesn't show up fully. A confident woman with unavailable energy doesn't chase. She doesn't overtext. She doesn't perform for validation. She's magnetic not because she tries, but because she knows her presence is powerful. If a man isn't ready, she doesn't take it personally. She respects his journey, but she protects hers. This energy is subtle but strong. It's in the way you keep your life full, even when you're dating. It's in how you don't rearrange your schedule for a maybe. It's in how you maintain your emotional boundaries, even when your heart is soft. It's in the way you can walk away not out of anger, but out of clarity. Men miss unavailable confidence because they rarely experience. They're used to being chased, explained to, forgiven for inconsistency. But when a woman doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't break, he feels that, and it lingers. So how do you embody this energy? You invest in your self-worth more than your fear of losing someone. You focus on becoming so aligned with your values that you'd rather lose someone than lose yourself. You speak less and observe more. You don't react, you redirect. You remain soft, but firm. Feminine, but not desperate. Open, but not emotionally leaking. And if he leaves, you don't collapse. You evolve. You trust that the man meant for you won't be confused about your value. He won't need to lose you to appreciate you. Unavailable confidence is not about pretending. It's about protecting your peace, your presence, and your power. So the next time you're tempted to prove yourself to someone, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting from my worth or from my wounds? Then realign, refocus, reclaim your energy. Because when you live in unavailable confidence, you don't chase moments. You attract commitment. You attract respect. You become the woman he remembers long after the others are forgotten. Silence is not the absence of communication. It's a form of it. And in relationships, especially with men, your silence can speak louder than your words ever could. See, when a woman speaks up, asks questions, expresses her feelings, checks in, it's often misread by men who are emotionally immature or not ready to meet her on the same level. To them, her voice starts sounding like pressure. Her vulnerability feels like confrontation, and her efforts become background noise, not because she's doing anything wrong, but because they never had to miss her. But the moment she goes silent, something shifts. The energy breaks, the pattern cracks, the constant stream of comfort, validation, and presence disappears. And that absence creates tension. Not angry tension, mystery, uncertainty, reflection. Why? Because silence removes control. When you're always talking, he knows where he stands. When you're explaining, he doesn't have to guess how you feel. When you're emotionally available, 24/7, he doesn't have to question whether you're still invested. But when you go quiet, not to manipulate, but to reclaim your power, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is what sparks curiosity, and eventually regret. Silence disrupts the pattern. It creates emotional contrast. It forces him to feel the void you used to fill so effortlessly. Most women don't realize this. Men don't process emotions through conversation the way women do. They process through space, through distance, through feeling your absence. When you stop reaching out, checking in, or over-explaining, you stop carrying the emotional weight of the connection, and he's left to either pick it up or let it fall apart. But here's the catch. Silence only speaks loudly when it comes from peace, not from passive aggression. When you go silent within a calm, not to punish, but to protect your energy, your silence becomes dignified, powerful, magnetic, and it sends the clearest message. I'm no longer available for confusion, inconsistency, or crumbs. Now let's talk about what this looks like. You stop texting first, not to play games, but because you've noticed he no longer reciprocates. You stop trying to fix the awkward tension. You let him sit in it. You stop repeating your boundaries. You enforce them quietly, through action. You stop posting for his attention. You live fully offline and unbothered. And you do all this, not in anger, but in alignment. Because when words stop working, withdrawal becomes the most honest response. Let your silence speak of your self-respect, of your emotional maturity, of your willingness to walk away rather than shrink to be loved. And remember, men notice when your energy disappears, especially when they had grown used to it. They feel the difference when the emotional oxygen you once gave so freely has been cut off. And they realize it wasn't just your messages, it was your warmth. It wasn't just your presence, it was your belief in them. It wasn't just your attention, it was the way you made them feel seen. Your silence forces them to confront that loss. And while some may not step up, others will finally wake up. Either way, you win. Because silence is clarity. It filters the inconsistent from the committed, the unsure from the intentional, the selfish from the sincere. So the next time you're tempted to over-explain why you're pulling away, don't. Let your absence do the explaining. Let your stillness be the lesson. Let your silence echo what words no longer can. Because a woman who knows the power of her silence is a woman a man never forgets. There's something unforgettable about the woman who walks away with grace. She doesn't slam the door. She doesn't beg for closure. She simply evolves, and in doing so, becomes the one he can't replace. This is the final and most powerful shift, becoming the woman he regrets losing. Regret doesn't come when you cry, plead, or prove your worth. It comes when you stop showing up in places you were once too available for. It comes when your name no longer lights up his phone, but your memory still lingers in his mind. Men don't miss you when you're chasing them. They miss you when you've finally chosen yourself. Becoming the one he regrets losing isn't about becoming colder.